Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's. I'm kind of reluctant to call it a webinar. It's almost a discussion, a conversation. This is Darren here with Komprise. I'm here with Krishna, and I'm just going to, what we're here to talk about is our new 2021 State of Unstructured Data Management Report. So let's just say hello. You can see that we are real people.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Krishna. How are you? Just having some coffee here.
Yep.
Ready for a chat. This is a pretty cool report. I mean, this is the first one we've done. We want to make it annual. And, really, what we did in June is we went and interviewed about 300 IT executives, IT storage leaders in organizations of over 1,000 employees in both the US and the UK. And we got back some really interesting results. We're going to dive into those results today. Before we do, Krishna, any kind of thoughts on kind of the survey itself? It's the first for Komprise, so I just wanted to let you tee it up.
Yeah, we definitely want to make this webinar interactive. I know there's some webinar fatigue out there, but with things the way they are, I think we're going to be doing webinars for a while in the future. What was really interesting and what led us to do this survey, and I think the reason we're going to make it annual, is because there's really not been that many surveys on unstructured data management. There's a lot of cloud surveys out there. There's a lot of surveys on big data or structured data and managing it. But unstructured data is so big today. It's over 80% of our total footprint, and we believe it deserves more attention. So.
Awesome. Well, we want to make this, we've seen, half hour is kind of the right amount of time. So let's jump in. And if we have time, it'd be cool to even show a little bit of Komprise towards the end of the conversation. So let's jump right into the data. So as I said, this survey was done in June, and we focused on 3 key areas. So data growth. How big is this problem? As Krishna said, everyone is dealing with massive volumes of unstructured data, but there hasn't been much intelligence or kind of any kind of survey that we've seen on the size and scope of the problem. The second is how are organizations dealing with it, and then what are your future plans? So what we want to do is just talk through some of the findings and share the insights and see if there's any surprises. So I think up front, not a huge surprise in terms of how much data organizations are dealing with and the budget they're spending. Did anything jump out here for you, Krishna, or what are your thoughts on kind of where this is now and where you think it will go?
It's really interesting. Like you said, Darren, I think this is what we expected to see, but it's always good to have customers confirm what we believe. If you look at the results, I think it was like 63% of the people we surveyed are managing over a petabyte of unstructured data, and about 30% or so of them are managing over 5 petabytes. And this is definitely consistent with our customers. Most of our customers today are managing multi-petabytes of data. And I would say we have not a small number of customers that are north of 50 petabytes, that are in the 100 petabyte range and are looking at exabytes, which is really staggering amount of growth. The other thing that was interesting to me is that for a while now, I've heard from customers that about 20% of their IT budget is spent on data management and storage. And it was interesting to see that in this survey, most people picked 30% as a number. So more of the IT budget is going towards managing unstructured data. And again, it's not a surprise given the data growth, but it's very interesting to have data that confirms what we believe is happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, you would think there's this rush to the cloud. I think the last year and a half with the pandemic has seen certainly a digital transformation acceleration, if you will. It's a mouthful. I was, if some of that you think, oh, great, we're moving to the cloud. Now our storage costs could come down. That's not always the case. And we can talk a bit about that. But what I found interesting here is 50% said they're already kind of hybrid in their storage strategy. I actually would have thought it would be higher. And then the point here about 40% investing in modernizing backup and disaster recovery, I think certainly ransomware is accelerating that. So What about these trends here? Would anything jump out at you here, Krishna?
It's I think it's increasingly clear that it's not going to be a cloud only world or a data center only world. It's going to be hybrid, and that's what our data is showing. It's interesting, just as you have surveys showing cloud adoption is increasing, there's also surveys showing that data at the edge is growing rapidly. And so I think that's what's happening. Data is piling up in different places. And it's not that it's all going to go into one place. It is going to be hybrid, and you're going to have to manage it across the different places. I thought 40% of the people saying they need to modernize their backup and DR is interesting, because it is very clear that for unstructured data, the way people are doing backups is just not working. The file, there's just too many files. It takes too long to back up. Backup windows are overlapping, and backup costs are escalating. So I think people are starting to recognize that you shouldn't back up all data the same way. You shouldn't try to create an isolated copy for ransomware of all file data. It's just not tenable. You have to right size backup DR, and you have to manage active hot data and cold data differently, not just from a storage efficiency perspective, but also from a backup and DR perspective.
I thought a good point on the edge. We talk kind of broadly about unstructured data as this one monolithic thing. What about the types of data that you're seeing organizations kind of grappling with? Like, what is it videos? Is it, imaging? We've talked in the past, we've dealt with some healthcare organizations with, big, imaging files. What kinds of data do you think are really driving some of this push to the cloud and push to the edge and cheaper, kind of storage solutions?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look like 2 decades ago and you asked, what kind of unstructured data does a company have? Probably most people would have said, oh, we have shared file servers for our user data. And that would probably be the predominant amount of unstructured data. Most of it was user data or, things like shared marketing documents. It was a lot of document related data. And that's just not the case anymore. Over 80% of the unstructured data today is generated through application workflows. So it's genomics data, or it's PACS imaging data, or it's self-driving car data. It's data that applications and users are generating, not as user documents, but as part of their corporate workflows. And the reason that is interesting is because it's showing you that unstructured data is becoming more and more valuable as a corporate asset, and needs to be not just managed from a storage perspective, but you have to actually find ways to get intelligence from that data.
It's a nice segue. We did a webinar. Our last webinar actually was a great one with AWS and Pfizer, a customer at Pfizer, talking about their cold data strategy. And really a driver there was what we saw in the report. We asked, what are your top priorities for data in the cloud? And of course, the number one, well, not a huge surprising, but it was maybe surprising that it eclipsed cost savings, was migrating more data to the cloud. So, talk to us a little bit about, the Pfizer story and kind of this cloud migration that we're seeing at Komprise.
Yeah, it's interesting, Darren, because I think Pfizer, though it's a big and recognizable company, they are very much like other organizations today in that, data is continuing to grow. Pfizer had a very interesting dilemma. We all know they were doing life-saving research for this COVID vaccine. So they did not want to do anything that would slow down their researchers. But as these researchers were working on initiatives, they were generating a lot of data. And Pfizer made a corporate decision about a year and a half ago that they're not going to build more data centers. So they're going to find ways to offset growth using the cloud. And so how do you do this? How do you get data to the cloud and yet not affect what your users are doing, not slow them down in any way? That's the issue they were dealing with. And it's very consistent with what we hear from most customers. I think that's why we're seeing in this survey that the biggest priority with unstructured data management is how do we get more data to the cloud? And part of that is how do you get the right data to the cloud? So in the case of Pfizer, what they decided is, we don't want to impact anything the researchers are doing, but there's over 67% of their data hadn't been touched in a year or more. And that cold data, by taking that to the cloud in a way that it's still accessible to the researchers, they still see it in their file system and namespaces, and they can still use it, but it's not sitting in the data centers anymore. By taking the cold data out, there's room now for new data to come in, and user productivity is not changed. If anything, it is better, but they're able to manage this cloud transition without disruption.
Yeah, it's a really great story. So, there is more on the Komprise website about this. There's a case study and some really good examples of business outcomes and technology approaches that they took. So let's just, getting back to this visibility. This was kind of a theme of the survey, and this chart, or these couple of charts, really bring that out. So we asked the question, what are your main objectives for improving your unstructured data management strategy? Number one is we need visibility to plan better. And then we asked, what new approaches to managing unstructured data are you taking or plan to take? And the top answer was creating data management policies that can be systematically applied. I thought some other interesting ones on the right side of this slide is, tagging data for future use. Back to your point about how to get more value out of this data, enabling data lakes and better user search of all the data, things like that really came out in the report. So any insights here, Krishna, or any surprises from these results?
This is very consistent with what we see with customers. I can't tell you how many meetings we have with VP of infrastructure IT or even CIOs, and they say we really don't know why we're spending so much on our storage and our data management, and we are lacking visibility because data is piling up in so many places. And it's not that people do not want to take action, but they need a systematic way to get visibility and to move data. I think that's what came out in the survey, and it's very consistent with what we hear from customers.
I want to ask you about it's kind of implied here. The number two is we want to avoid rising storage and backup costs. Talk to me about what you're thinking right now or seeing on ransomware. I'm seeing a lot of vendors really amplifying their ransomware story. It's a huge problem, very mainstream in the media. How does that fit into some of these results? And maybe that can segue into when we talk about Komprise in a few minutes.
Yeah, it's very interesting because ransomware is very pervasive. These guys are attacking your network, they're attacking your data, they're attacking users. Through users, they're trying to come in through email. So ransomware is very broad. It has implications on all aspects of IT. So when something is very broad, it's also very hard to solve it in a cost-effective way. And I think that's the problem with unstructured file data, because you have to protect file data from ransomware attacks, but how much do you spend in the process, and is it worth it? And I think that's what a lot of IT leaders are grappling with. There's so much file data. If simply saying I'm going to use my backup solution and create yet another copy of my backup somewhere else may not be the right answer, because backups are getting attacked by ransomware, and that copy, after all that money, may not actually be protected. So the question is there a way to right size ransomware for file data? Is there a ransomware protection? Is there a way to get the protection but without exorbitant cost? And we believe there is. Basically, you can get an isolated copy of your file data at a much lower cost outside of your backup DR and storage processes. And we believe that that will help alleviate the pain of protecting so much file data.
That makes sense. So let's jump in and move out of the survey. We'll come back to some of the conclusions of the survey, and as I said at the start, and you can download it at komprise.com/survey. I think it'd be a good time. Actually, let me just, before we jump to demo, let's just show that we're real people here for folks that might have joined late. So I'll end the slides. Hi, Krishna. So I'm going to. Thanks for kind of letting me ask you a bunch of different questions. I thought some really interesting insights there. Let's jump into showing folks a little bit of what Komprise looks like if you're new to this, and then we'll come back to some of the next steps and recommendations.
Yeah, we wanted to show you Komprise, not so much just to show you Komprise, but really a lot of these things in the survey, which people said they want better visibility and they want a more systematic way to manage data. And we just wanted to show you that that is possible and use ourselves as an example of how to do it. So with that, I'm going to actually move to the screen and start sharing that. This is the Komprise solution that I'm showing you. It's a hybrid cloud service. So if you want to sign up to try it, for example, you just let us know and we'll set this up for you. It's within minutes you can be using it. And the first thing you do is you connect it to the storage that you have. Because visibility is the number one problem, people said. And so how do you get visibility across all your storage? And so in this example, you can see that in our Atlanta site, we have a bunch of different storage environments. We have some NetApp, some Isilon, some Windows servers, etc. And you can just point Komprise at all of these. And once you point Komprise at all your storage, within minutes, even on petabytes of data, you will start getting analytics. And the first thing you see is a heat map. So this donut is showing you how much of the data is cold and hasn't been used in a long time, and then how much of the data is more active. And you can see that over half the data in this environment is cold. It hasn't touched in a year or more. And this is very consistent with what we see with customers. In fact, for file data, in most environments, 80% of the data hasn't been touched in a year or more. So that's a lot of data that is probably sitting on expensive storage. Maybe you're putting it on flash. You might be running backups on it. You might be keeping a DR copy of all of it. And the question is not that this data shouldn't be protected and shouldn't be on durable storage, but does it need that high cost of management? And in fact, to see how you could offset this cost and even get ransomware protection on that data at a fraction of the cost, you can actually edit some policies here. And as you edit it, Komprise will show you your projected savings based on your own cost models. So for example, we could say, look, maybe anything over a year old in our Atlanta site, we want to move to a bucket in the cloud. So we're taking it from a file storage that is being actively managed, and we're putting it into a durable object storage in the cloud, where it's going to be passively managed, meaning that it's not going to be consuming backup, DR, and primary storage resources. So I could do that. And when I do that, I don't know if you saw, but this purple bar changed, and it's saying now 2.3 petabytes of capacity will get freed up by doing this. But 6.9 petabytes of backup would be reduced, and here's my cost savings. And all the costs behind this are in a cost model that you can edit, so you can have your own costs in here. But in addition to doing that, you can also use Komprise to say, look, I do want to put a copy of this data in an object-locked location where nobody can rewrite that data, because by doing that, I'm going to get a protected copy. And it's going to be outside my backup. It's outside my storage. So it's not going to be vulnerable. It's an isolated little recovery copy in the cloud. So you can set that up, and Komprise would actually put that recovery copy for you in a bucket. You could even say, look, I'm only going to do that on my hot data. And for my cold data, I'm just going to actually tier it to an object locked bucket, and that's enough. I don't need to also make yet another copy. So you could do that, and that would reduce your costs even further. And of course, data that's truly obsolete, that you don't need anymore, you could confine it and delete it as well. So this gives you a systematic way to set different policies. And whenever you're done with it, all you do is done and activate, and it actually runs these policies, and it moves the data based on the policies you set. And the beauty of it, just as we said in the Pfizer example, when it moves the data, your users don't actually think the data moved anywhere. It looks transparent. I'm trying to make the screen bigger. Here's a folder, and some of the files here we have moved. They're cold data, and we have moved them, but they still show up in the file folder just like the local files. And all I have to do is double click that file, and it opens. And it opens just like a local file would, except that it's now coming from the cloud. And it's an object in the cloud that got translated to a file, but I as a user don't know any of that. So it's completely transparent, just like storage tiering is transparent. This is transparent, but it's actually giving you file object duality. So it's moving the data to the cloud, putting it as an object in the cloud. You can directly access it as an object from the cloud, or you can access it as a file from the original location. So I just wanted to show this to you because if you're grappling with visibility into your file data, and if you're looking for a more systematic way to get more data to the cloud, or to manage your data better, to cut your backup costs, get a ransomware copy, protected copy, etc., there are solutions like Komprise that can help you do that, that can help you systematically get visibility into your data and to manage it. And to that last point of extracting data value, as Komprise looks at your data and moves it, it also creates a global data index. It does something that we call deep analytics. It actually analyzes all that data so that you could search for relevant data by any criteria. So you could say, look, I just want to find all my cold emails, or I want to find everything tagged as project tags. And even though we have several petabytes of data in this environment, it's saying that 667 terabytes fit this criteria. That's about 7 million files. And it gives you all the statistics on this, and you can actually view those files themselves. And all of this is available through an API. So you could take those files and you could copy it into Amazon Redshift, or you could copy it into Snowflake for processing. So you could do all those things. So it not only helps you manage the data, but it also helps you extract value from your data. So that's just a short demo. We just wanted to show you what is possible. I'll hand it back to Darren.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, actually, it ties nicely. First of all, we want to make this kind of a short, concise conversation. But what you showed, I think, really ties nicely back to some of the takeaways of the report. I mean, you emphasized a few things that really stood out for me. I mean, I feel like a lot of organizations start with, hey, we need to do a data migration, or we need to do archiving or tiering of data or replication. So they might know those use cases, but they're not thinking about the need for analytics first, right? So this first point on don't compromise on visibility, or the second on right place your data. So you have to not only have the visibility and analytics, but then you need to be able to take action. And I thought you talked about this concept of file object duality and this the focus on transparency and no disruption for your users. I thought that was really powerful in the demo. Stop treating all data the same. I think it's easy to say. It seems like it's harder to do when you're in the role, right? When you're managing all of these volumes and rising costs. And then the last point you really emphasized at the end of your demo is what you can do with the data once you actually have been able to right place it. So data management is a foundation for data monetization. So those are 4 takeaways from the report. And I felt like they came out really well when you showed that in the demonstration. What other takeaways do you have, Krishna, just to kind of give you the final word here, and also just go to where people can go to download the report and see a custom demo of Komprise. But what other takeaways do you have? Having gone through the data, kind of shared some of the insights and recommendations for people out there listening today.
Yeah, I think you captured all of them, Darren, and I think in this discussion we gave the key highlights. What would be interesting, of course, is to see how this trend continues over time. That would be quite interesting to see. But overall, data is growing fast. IT budgets, data management is consuming more of the IT budget. Yes, you can address problems by use case, but by taking a more holistic approach and starting with visibility and not treating all data the same, you can actually get a handle on this problem. You can manage data better while cutting costs and increasing data value. It is possible. So that's what was interesting. I think there are some questions also I see, Darren. I don't know if we want to go through
let's
those.
do that. Let's go to some questions and we'll go back to ourselves. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up. I'm going to do that. But yeah, there's the first question on ransomware. A backup vendor can also send my data to object lock storage in the cloud. So is it cheaper to use Komprise for that?
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, you can have your backup vendor put a copy. The only problem, there are a couple of problems. One is that if the backup application itself gets attacked, then of course, whatever it's putting in the cloud might be compromised. So that's an issue. And I think the second issue with using backup to do this is cost. Because if you already have a 3-2-1, and if you already are keeping 3 copies of your data, and now you're adding a 4th copy of all the data, and that's just a significant amount of cost to consider. What we're saying is that we can actually tier 80% of your data, the cold data, by your policy, out of that active management, out of the storage, backup, and DR cycles, into an object locked cloud location. So we're actually shrinking the cost of that cold data. And then for the remaining 20% hot data, you could use your backup solution to do the protection, and it'll seamlessly work with what we're doing. Or you can use us to make a copy. You have multiple approaches, but we're essentially shrinking 80% of your costs on the cold data. That's what we're saying.
That makes sense. Often it seems like when people see Komprise, they are a surprise, right? They didn't know there was something like that out there that did this, that give you the visibility and the transparent movement. So that sets up this question. There are a lot of vendors talking about data management. So it's a hot topic, which is great to see. So there are many data management platforms out there, plus storage vendors have some data management functionality. So how is Komprise different? How would you summarize the sort of unique elements of Komprise?
Yeah, so I mean, historically, storage vendors have done some data management, mainly the disk vendors, because all you had was disk and tape. So it made sense that your disk vendor would manage your data, because that's the only place from which you could actually do any compute on your data. You can't do compute from tape. But the world has changed. Now you have flash, disk, object, cloud. You have 16 tiers of storage in the cloud. And the cloud is not just a digital graveyard for your data. It's a compute layer. So now it makes sense that you want an independent data management solution that's not proprietary, that can work across these environments and not get in the way of your data. I think that's what makes Komprise unique. We move your data, we analyze your data, but we're not in your hot data path. We're outside that data path. So we're not virtualizing all your data and sitting in front of it. We're not creating a new global namespace that you have to come to, and we're holding you hostage for any access that you have. We're not doing those things. We're saying you can directly get your data from the cloud. You can directly get your data from your file system. And we are providing you this way to move data. and we're translating object to file when needed, but otherwise we're outside the data path. That's what sets us apart. We let you be in control of your data at all times.
Fantastic. Well, that is the promised half hour. So let me just pop up this slide here. Again, if you want to download the report, if you'd like to engage, connect with us and see more of a custom demo based on your environment, talk to us about your use case, you can go to komprise.com/demo. So that is the end of our session. Thanks, Krishna, for a great conversation. We hope you all found it useful. And if you have feedback on questions for next year's report, we do want to make this an annual survey. So please do share that with us. And we look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Thank you.